also have for our participants at DoDM 2024 a plethora of kiosks in the atrium. You can visit these and know more about some of the pioneering work being done by our centers of excellence. Our NatWest Digital Library, a kiosk where students of our postgraduate program have put together demonstrations of their takeaway from their rural immersion. We also have a fun DM snake and ladder game and a reflection corner for the participants to engage in. We are thrilled to announce the launch of the ISDM CDSSI Code for Change 24-25, a social sector hackathon. This time, we will be building solutions on two themes: youth employability and climate resilience. Together with our knowledge partners, Esther Foundation and Common Grounds, we encourage you to find your team and register soon for your favorite theme. Scan the QR code at the CDSSI kiosk and register. We have a kiosk by Goonj called Disaster Myth and Realities, witnessing disasters through Anshu Gupta's lenses. It is a photo exhibition of journey in the last 3 decades in disasters, a roaming exhibition of pictures and photographs from the ground. Our student volunteers are in the room and they will be distributing papers and chits for you to write your questions for our speakers. ISDM Center of Innovative Finance and Social Impact, FICCI, is launching a report in December on impact measurement that captures current practices and challenges of impact measurement in the sector. It represents perspectives of various M&E experts, practitioners, and not-for-profit organizations. In order to access the report, you can head towards the kiosk of FICCI, scan the QR code, and get access to the report. Request everyone to please take your seats. May we request the audience members to please put their phones on silent for calls and notifications. Additionally, flash photography is strictly prohibited during the sessions and plenaries. Our third session of the day in this track is titled, "Is a Unified Voice for the Sector Possible and Viable?" The third session is structured to capture insights on the discussion on the viability and impact of establishing a representative body for the social sector. The session will focus on learning from the past efforts and identifying success conditions for inclusive growth and sustainable development. May I invite our moderator for the session, Ms. Smita, Strategic Advisor, Deloitte. Can we have a huge round of applause for ma'am? We are pleased to have Mr. Anshu Gupta, Founder Goonj and Gram Swabhimaan, Mr. Pratyush Panda, CEO, OneStage, and Mr. Sanjeev Kumar Jha, Director, India Sanitation Coalition at FICCI FICCI. Can we have a huge round of applause for our speakers today? Over to you, Smita ma'am.
Thank you. On behalf of ISDM, thank you for staying back after lunch. And on behalf of all of us, thank you for choosing this session. Satya, lovely to see you as well. Thank you for adding glamour to our session. A wonderful, wonderful session in the morning. So I wanted to start off by quick show of hands if you already have a point of view on this topic. Is there a need for a unified voice in the sector? So very quickly, yes is, wow. No, we don't need it. Interesting. When we'll come to you, ma'am. Unsure, pata nahi. Okay. No, thank you so much. And I think one of the reasons why this topic was chosen by ISDM team and particularly Gaurav is the fact that there has been a lot of discussion and debate about the need of this particular voice. Is it a unified voice? What is the purpose? What is the meaning of unified voice? Why do we actually do this? These are some of the things that we'll try and unpack. So again, a formal thank you to ISDM for giving me an opportunity to moderate and also present my own views, which may or may not align with ISDM and many of the panelists. And that's how these guys choose their moderator, somebody who can sort of really call a spade a spade. So Sanjeev ji, I'll start with you. Sanjeev, you have been, work with FICCI. FICCI doesn't need an introduction. I'll share my mic with you. And so FICCI is recognized as a very successful case study of bringing a unified voice to the sector, but it's also seen largely in the context of a private sector. And you yourself are now also heading another initiative, which is a sanitation collaborative, which again was very interesting to know. So I think if you can share with the audience that some background about how FICCI was started, why did you think of an industry body? Was the agenda different at that time? Is it changed over the period of time? How do you see the future of an industry body? And then in the second half of the session, then we'll sort of unpack a little bit more about the nuances of running a body. I'm sure it's got its own pains and challenges. But initially, just a background about FICCI, about the collaborative, and how do you think it resonates with the social sector?
Thank you, Smita, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity that I've got here. And to respond to your question, I'd like to say that FICCI is a pre-independence era organization, and you'll be happy to know that the first annual general meeting of FICCI, which is Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, the largest federation of industry that exists in the world, was chaired by none other than the father of the nation in 1932. So, a pretty old organization, and with systems in place, and the broad and the primary mandate of FICCI is to be the industry's voice for policy change. But when I say that policy change, it's not that the policies have already been formulated and FICCI is there to evaluate as to how that has been formulated or whether it suits the industry in terms of uh, getting opportunity to do business to create profit. The idea was to ensure that whatever in terms of policy exists benefits the industry, of course, because industries need to survive to help the nation undertake the path of development. But on the other hand, the government is also required to be sensitized to be able to, bring about all those important changes which are relevant to make both work. Industries should be allowed to, encouraged to, thrive, earn profit, and also support the nation undertake that path to development. That was one. India Sanitation Coalition came into being in 2015, almost simultaneous with the launch of the Swachh Bharat Mission, the ambitious initiative of the Government of India, which was initiated on October 2014 when PM Modi announced its launch from the ramparts of Red Fort. It's not that the sanitation journey of India had actually began, that late. It had begun in 1986 with Central Rural Sanitation Program. Then it transitioned into Total Sanitation Campaign, then into NBA, and then ultimately it was Swachh Bharat Mission or SBM, which was launched in 2014. And the broad mandate of coalition is to able to have all the relevant partners, including the industry partners, on a common platform to support Government of India and the multiple state government to ensure that the private sector participation is constantly on the rise, because government alone is not capable of uh, designing, planning, and then implementing, and then ensure that the outcomes are achieved. So the talk here and the topic here, the development management, the seeds of development management are already shown, and the sapling is already there, and we're trying to nurture that sapling with multiple efforts from multiple partners in order to ensure that the developmental outcomes for India are achieved in time. So I think with my
Yeah.
opening remark, and then I pause here and then
Okay, so just to summarize, so you're saying that the purpose of FICCI establishing as an industry body initially was in terms of a policy initiative. So any policy changes which were requested from the industry bodies, industry groups, that was sort of relayed to the government as a credible source through FICCI.
absolutely,
Correct?
absolutely.
And also the other side, because you said the capacity of government to sort of bring stakeholders together was a challenge, and hence the body of FICCI was sort of used for the collaborative to make sure that the Swachh Bharat mission is, done more successfully.
Yeah.
Does that
So
right?
beautifully summarized, and there are numerous instances. So if I get a couple of more minutes afterward, then I'll be able to cite, real life examples to demonstrate it to the entire audience as to how it has helped. Thank
So,
you.
do you think a collaborative like this on India sanitation would have been possible if the main body of FICCI was not there?
It would have been a challenge because
Yeah.
bringing an initiative, a fresh initiative on a platform which is already well established, because we had the choice. Had Ms. Nanalal Kidwai, who actually founded India Sanitation Coalition at FICCI, being the past FICCI president also, we could have gone ahead and registered India Sanitation Coalition as a separate legal entity. But then the challenges would have been very different. Here, the advantage was that FICCI was an established body. So anything which is coming up as a FICCI's baby is of course privileged. So that privilege we already had, and accordingly we worked, and we've already arrived at a place. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Pratyush, I'm coming to you. Again, you've had the experience of both from a CSR perspective and your current role as a collaborative. How have you seen the evolution of a unified voice? I mean, as a CSR, foundation leader, did you feel alone at times, craved for a body or a unified, organization structure? And now that you're on the other side of the table running a collaborative, how does it feel?
So yes, as you said, yes, I started. I was with Care for 10 donkey years, and in 2006 I went to as a manager CSR. Rule came in 2014. Even after 14, even until last year at times, yes, I was feeling lonely at some point of time because the matching of wavelength. How do you respect your partner, a partner on the real sense partner, or is it still you say partner or behave like a donor? All those nuances are at some point of time it used to be standstill in corporate world. And again, to some part of blame will also go to organizations like FICCI, CI, and others, because on these organizations also the top-notch players are also none of the people from having social sector expertise. They're always in a mindset of kitto gayo, kitto ayo. So if that happens, all those you leave out the feelings for your civil society, feelings for CSR, the corporate sustainability, the governance, all those takes a backseat. All those take backseat, and we used to innovate certain things within different fraternity. One of the example is Aspire Circle itself, and there are n numbers of such bodies, but results are not that big. And digressing out of the main topic is pretty easy in India in that sense. Coming back to other side, I must say, after working for almost 20 years in corporate at with ACC, Holcim, L&T, LTI, Mindtree, for last 5 years there was a boggling question in my mind. Lot of good civil society organizations are vanishing in this country. As a democratic country, reaching to outreach is always being done by the civil society, never by the, any corporate or any government bodies. When it comes to reaching the outreach pockets, it's always a civil society. In these circumstances, if NGOs are, not able to thrive and going out, कल वो गया आज कोई जा रहा कल मेरी बारी आएगी. It's like we are on the same pipeline. And I've seen care action, Dedit action, Save the Children, Oxfam, in number of NGOs. And reason why I create a purpose in my mind, let me go to other side of the table, try to solve some issues. Even if I'll not succeed, I'll say मुझे बुरा नहीं लगा कि मैंने try नहीं किया था. So reason why I said नहीं, I'm just like a month before I shifted to Charities Aid Foundation, now called OneStage. And this side also, when I'm looking, and voices are pretty diverse. I know it's diverse from, in 360 degree on latitude and longitude both way. And I strongly feel there need to be unified voice in which shape and size, formal, informal, quasi-formal kind of thing, whether it has to be regional or some issue-based or only for advocacy. That need a lot of debate to take a call, and we should not take a decision before having enough debate on those lines. But there need to be. I'll cite one example again. Even if there is FICCI and CI, you go to all big cities, they have their own chambers of commerce. Can anyone beat Bombay Chambers of Commerce in Bombay? They will not attend FICCI meeting, but they will certainly attend BCCI. So there is something pretty area specific, regional specific, and also issue based kind of things are there which they thrive much faster than others on those lines. That also need to happen in whether you call it CSR and social sector, because India as such having 140 crores. We are not a country. We are not even a continent. Continent like Europe can, 4 or 5 times can go inside us with respect to our total population. So a lot of things has to be very regional and issue specifics. Coming back to my final remarks on those lines, unless you have a unified voice, nobody is going to listen to you. Be dead sure on those lines. You might have issues with present government on XY, but with the new government you might have issues with G, A, B, C. That will continue unless you have a unified voice on certain things. Thank you, and over to you.
No, this is interesting. Thank you. And my own perspective as a consultant is that, and I'll be honest here, I know this is public forum, but as consultants, we've benefited from the fact that there is no organized body in the social sector. So I have, we do projects where we bring a multitude of voices into the room, try to make sense, we craft white papers because we have the ability to write succinctly. So yes, we've been. So I think 3 of us are selfish on this matter. You have already done it. So for you, the question is that why do we need it? I'm already doing it. That's exactly the reason why I started my organization, and you've proven the model, not once, many times over. What do you
No, so I feel we have no option, okay, and we're actually missing in a big way. And this is something we've been saying for many years, not that we've been able to make a lot of efforts in that direction. I don't know what are the reasons, we need to really dig into that. But in this country, even the khomchawalas and the rickshawalas have associations and unified voices. This is one huge sector which actually has no unified voice. और पॉजिटिव तो छोड़िए, कि हम पॉजिटिव कोई एडवोकेसी कर लें, बात कर लें, वो सब तो बातें छोड़िए. We are not even able to clean up the myths about us and the wrong notions about us. And that's very painful, right? I mean, all of us are in this hall are sitting and coming from, say, this sector. किसी भी उसके branch से हो, but coming from this sector. And all of us have gone to the best possible universities. Many of us are MBAs and whatnot. Okay, but आज की डेट में भी इस देश में कि the moment you talk about the volunteer sector, the perception is कि अच्छा तुझे कोई और काम नहीं मिला, and that's why you are here. Yeah, हमारे यहाँ मतलब you have seen that center and all in Delhi, and बहुत सारे विजिटर्स आते हैं दिल्ली का सेंटर विजिट करते हैं. माई कोलीग्स आर ऑल्सो सिटिंग हियर, ऑलमोस्ट ईच वन ऑफ अस इंक्लूडिंग माई सेल्फ. हमसे ये सवाल बहुत बार पूछा गया कि तुमको सैलरी मिलती है क्या, और यदि मिलती है तो किसी की हिम्मत होती है कि वो आपसे भी पूछ लेता है कि कितनी मिलती है ना. अब मुझे अभी किसी ने 1 महीने पहले पूछा, मतलब नाउ गोंज इज़ ऑलमोस्ट 1200 पीपल, राइट, अब 25 साल हो गए. मुझसे किसी ने पूछा कि आप और क्या करते हैं, तो मैंने कहा तुम किसी पान वाले से जाके तो नहीं पूछते हो और क्या करते हो, सिर्फ सोशल सेक्टर के लोगों से तुम्हारी इतनी हिम्मत हो जाती है पूछने की. But and this entire, I mean, a lot of youngsters are sitting here and almost all of them have gone through this phase that शादी होगी कि नहीं होगी. I mean, what nonsense. And this entire, that's why I'm saying why this unified voice is important. It's not about issue based. It's about the humans of this sector. That is the core of it. क्योंकि हम कुछ सोल लेके आते हैं. मैं ये नहीं कहता कि बिजनेस सेक्टर पे सोल नहीं है, फाइन, बट हम पे थोड़ा एडिशनल है. ओके, बिकॉज हम एज ह्यूमन वी वांट टू वर्क विद द ह्यूमन. दूसरा, इट्स अ वेरी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड सेक्टर, फाइन, एंड दिस इज समथिंग आई ऑफन से कि एवरी अदर सेक्टर लार्जली लुक्स फॉर ए हैप्पी कस्टमर, कि भाई किसको आप सर्विस और प्रोडक्ट बेच सकते हो. दिस इज द ओनली सेक्टर विच लुक फॉर पीपल इन ग्रीफ एंड कॉन्स्टेंटली ग्रीफ, और वो भी कह रहे ये इतना दुखी नहीं, और दुखी के पास जाते. एंड तो आप उतना इम्पॉर्टेंट काम कर रहे हैं. कोविड में आपने सबको सेलिब्रेट किया ना, आपने मेडिकल फ्रेटर्निटी को इतना सेलिब्रेट किया, बट यहाँ जब हमने पहला सर्वे किया था उसके कुछ दिनों के अंदर 200 पीपल ऑफ दिस सेक्टर लॉस्ट लाइफ, क्योंकि सब तो फ्रंट लाइन पे थे. अब कोई एजुकेशन में काम कर रहा है, उसको हेल्थ का एच नहीं पता, मेडिकल फ्रेटर्निटी को नहीं पता था कोविड क्या है, हमको क्या पता होगा. बट वी आर ऑल ड्रिवन बाय इमोशंस, सो वी ऑल ऑफ अस वर ऑन द रोड्स, बट इट वॉज नेवर सेलिब्रेटेड, इट वॉज नेवर एक्नॉलेज्ड. तो मुझे लगता है कि वाई दिस वॉइस इज नीडेड इज फॉर द ह्यूमंस ऑफ दिस सेक्टर. इस एक नैरेटिव चल रहा है विच मैनी ऑफ अस हैव बीन हियरिंग, 3 मिलियन NGOs, है ना, और वो 1860 का एक्ट है. एक आप इस देश में कंपनी बंद कर सकते हो, NGO बंद नहीं कर सकते. BCCI भी NGO, DPS भी NGO, हम भी NGO, सब NGO, एंड 3 मिलियन NGOs. नो वन नोज वो डेटा कहाँ से आया. भाई इंटरप्रिटेशन है कि हर 400 लोगों पे एक NGO है, एंड नन ऑफ अस इज काउंटरिंग दैट, वी आर एक्चुअली सपोर्टिंग दैट. होल लॉट ऑफ आवर डॉक्यूमेंट्स वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट. तो मैंने एक बार पूछा किसी से कि भाई तुम इतनी गालियाँ देते हो उस सेक्टर को, 3 मिलियन NGOs, एक NGO में माना 20 लोग भी हैं, तो वी एम्प्लॉय 6 करोड़ पीपल. आपके फेक डेटा पे इफ आई गो, that way is the biggest employer. That is why that unified and the fact based conversations and narrative is important for us.
Oh, thank you. This is helpful. So as you can see, I think all four of us are pretty unified in our thoughts. But wanted to hear very quickly from the audience if somebody has a contrary view on this before we get into the second part of the discussion. Anybody still feels that we don't need a unified voice? Or it's actually the jobs, because I had done some bit of research and some, anecdotal conversations before this panel with some people, and they said ki, and is it okay if I go a little English? Yeah. So कि स्मिता आप इसकी बात करें, हम सोशल सेक्टर इसीलिए हैं क्योंकि हमारा काम ही ये है सब स्टेक होल्डर्स को अलाइन करना. सो वही हमारा काम है, हम इसीलिए आए क्योंकि यूनिफाइड वॉइस नहीं थी. अब हम आ गए हैं, अब आप बोल रहे हैं एक और चाहिए. What is the point? So that's the contrary side of things that what I was hearing, of course not from this particular panel, but just a quick another round. I mean, anybody has any short thoughts to share? Otherwise, I'll start with the second round. Go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now.
Yes. I'm Supriya. I work for Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy, coming from the energy sector. But what you're saying is very relevant. And I think it's not about whether we need a unified voice, but what are we talking about? So we say कि unified voice नहीं है, इसलिए social sector काम कर रहा है. But what are they doing? So do we have one voice or too many smaller ones? So what we need, I feel here, is what is that strong narrative which needs to come together?
Okay, and you're talking about, so in another way, you're talking about the purpose of the unified voice. Thank you. This was actually my second round of questions. So again, I wanted to come to you first, Pratyush, because as a collaborative now, and you said you wanted the other side, is the fact that, what is the purpose? I mean, yes, Sanjeev has a purpose, his sanitation mission, it is advancing the government's agenda. Sorry, I didn't want to say it like that. Yeah, I mean, Pratyush, I mean, collaboratives, as somebody said, the lady said that बहुत हैं.
Purpose is very clear at my mind. Reaching the outreach through civil societies. Because जब 140 करोड़ जनता का बात करते हैं ना, तो people think that India starts from Delhi, ends in Mumbai via Ahmedabad. That's not the India. आप कभी आइए बिहार में घुसिए, पलामू में जाइए, झारखंड में जाइए, वेस्ट सिंह में जाइए, संतरासवादियों के बीच, आतंकवादियों के बीच काम करके देखिए, 1 घंटे 2 घंटे, पूरा दिन भी नहीं, फिर पता चलता है कि आटे दाल के भाव क्या है। वहाँ भी काम करते हैं सिविल सोसाइटी के लोग, वहाँ भी एनजीओज हैं, वहाँ के एनजीओज को भी कॉर्पोरेट फंड करते हैं, और सारे कॉर्पोरेट हेडक्वार्टर्स आर देयर इन दिस 3 स्टेट्स, छत्तीसगढ़, उड़ीसा, झारखंड। सारे वहाँ मलाई खाएंगे, आके दिल्ली, बम्बई, अहमदाबाद में खर्च करेंगे। एंड वहाँ जो छोटे छोटे एनजीओज है, हु विल टेक केयर ऑफ देम इफ यू आर नॉट हैव यूनिफाइड बॉयज? वो जो वहाँ, और वहाँ के एनजीओ के जो तकलीफें, इट्स pretty much beyond that the NGO staff that we hire or people, all of us are in cities.
Okay.
उनकी वेदना तो आप समझ नहीं पाएंगे unless you go and talk to them. And on those line, अभी भी हम समझ नहीं पाते हैं कि इनफैक्ट बहुत ज़रूरत है कि नहीं है. I think there is a good time to come for us also.
Just one line to add on Pratyush thing, I think जो एक बहुत गलत तरीका है, and the way we have been visualizing and telling the world, NGOs को आपने एक सिविल सोसाइटी को आपने एक बेनिफिशियरी बना दिया, राइट? आई मीन इवन कॉर्पोरेट वालों में तो हम लोग वेंडर रजिस्ट्रेशन फॉर्म साइन करते हैं, we become the vendor, right? The fact remains that NGOs are not beneficiaries. They are the best possible experts in certain field with the best possible delivery mechanism जो और कोई नहीं कर पाता, including government agencies that way. That's the truth. तो I think ये जो voice है, what Pratyush is saying, is not just about creating an association or something or an industrial body. वो जो आपने कहा, it's about that narrative, it's about that purpose, it's about that, as I said, human in the cause, or why do we exist, and why don't people really understand the sector in a much deeper way. That's why this voice is important.
Sanjeev ji, it was not easy to set up FICCI, set up the sanitation collaboration, and it's not easy to run it sustainably. So a large part of the challenge, I am presuming, because I've had the privilege of, as a consultant, working as a knowledge partner with likes of FICCIs and CIIs for many years, and very honestly, we benefit from that. And we are the ones who write those reports of the numbers. All cards on the table. It's extremely difficult to sustain a body like that. It's easy to say that the private sectors pay up an annual membership fees, which allows you to run this organization efficiently, so that the next mission which comes up can do it. I'm sure there are challenges on that side. There are definitely challenges, and I'll come to others. But what are those different things that sort of, keep you awake at night and say, how do I make this body run efficiently, sustainably, and yet be true to the purpose?
First of all, I would like to congratulate my co-panelists for calling a spade a spade. I mean, these problems are real life problems on the ground. And these people have been experiencing it a little bit more than maybe I am, or we are. But the fact remains that the unification of that voice has already set in. If you allow me to quote a certain example, there are a large number of non-profit organizations who have been engaged with our corporate partners, and under India Sanitation Coalition at FICCI's oversight, to support government, which we typically call a multi-stakeholder coalition engagement. And I would like to amplify it with an example, which is the Lighthouse Initiative, which the India Sanitation Coalition conceived along with the Government of India. And under this Lighthouse Initiative, a certain number of Gram Panchayats initially, around 75 of them, were made ODF plus model. And ODF plus model means that where nobody is actually defecating in the open, and there are appropriate solid and liquid waste management arrangements in place. And along with the commemoration of 75 years of independence of India, we celebrated that. Here, if you look at the engagement framework, then we had the multilaterals, the unilaterals, the corporate partners, the industries federation, and people who actually implemented all of that on the ground. There would be issues, because the moment I say or you say multi-stakeholder coalition engagement, there would be challenges, and it will be extremely, extremely difficult to be able to solve them overnight. But I can assure you that the unification of the voice for the development outcomes of India has already set in. I have given one example. I can give several more.
But challenges का example दीजिए.
If you look at the challenge is to be able to sustain a coalition like us. Because we, see, the days of grant are primarily over. So you have to be able to earn to be able to sustain yourself. So that's the ground reality. Even for India Sanitation Coalition, if you do not enter into the project management as such, it will be difficult to sustain our human resources with grants that we had gotten in the past. So the challenges are actually like that.
Funding is a challenge.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Otherwise, if you look at the opportunities which are around, I have my own opinion about it, and I have a right to mine as they have right to theirs. So the problem is that, if the proposal is actually robust, if the technicalities have been, are taken care of, if it has been designed well, then probably in this country now, funds should not be a big problem.
So assuming that funds are available for FICCI, is still getting everyone's diversified stakeholders' voice into a unified voice? I'm assuming it's challenging.
There is a principle in physics, because my dad taught physics, entropy. So entropy, if this system is not experiencing any disorder, then you and I are left with absolutely no work. So there would be problems, and you should be able to solve it with the effort that you are able to make based on whatever is available to you. You can always try and strive for more. Nobody is stopping you with that. But then to say that, no, it is impossible to surge ahead, I would have
Do you often apply the 80-20 rule, or because diversified views have their own perspectives, and respectfully, each has a point. So is there an attempt to sort of, bring them together? Because it's easy to say that, you bring the unified, all the voices together.
As I said, that the partners have actually realized that whether it's non-profit, or the industry partners, or the multilaterals, unilaterals, agencies like USAID, UNICEF, World Bank, ADB, all of that. If you look at it, everybody, each of these entities has a mandate, and they need partners. So partnership is the key. So the moment I say that partnership is the key, and the entire audience or all of you are actually convinced, that means the unification of voice has already set in. Now it has to grow from here, it has to evolve from here, and efforts should be on to ensure that it gets strengthened as we move ahead.
It's easy, Anshu, it's easy to say that, we should partner and we should collaborate. But, hand on heart, it's very, very difficult. And, again, if you have, does a body sort of make it a little easier, an organized body, a forum? We've talked about mission creeps, because many organizations here would resonate with the fact that, yes, it's in our mandate to convene and bring stakeholders together, but sometimes we feel that we are ending up just being event managers and organizing convenings and conferences. Will a body or will that help in the agenda of bringing the unification together of the voices?
I would say it helps for sure, because one of the very successful example in the last 3-4 years is something called Catalyst 2030. Some of us got together, it started, and it's like an international forum with a good presence in India also. And also because this was not like a particular issue based. It also had multiple stakeholder, right from the development sector to the CSR to the main fellowship in the social sector and all. So, and it has a unified voice, fine. At least whether we will be able to have that UN sustainability goal or not, we all know it is not going to happen at all. But at least social sector is getting some space in conversations there. Otherwise, वो आप लास्ट में एक एक्स्ट्रा की तरह हम लोगों को सेक्टर को आप ट्रीट करते हो कि 5 कोई और स्पीकर हैं, एक कोई सोशल सेक्टर वाले को बुला लो, थोड़ा एक्टिविस्ट टाइप बोलेगा, अच्छा लगेगा, इट विल ऐड सम फ्लेवर. तो एटलीस्ट वो स्पेस को अब हम लोग थोड़ा बेटर कैप्चर कर पा रहे हैं. दूसरा, there are a lot of collaborations on the practical part of it, on the implementation part of it. What we are talking about is the voice part of it. कि और जो मैंने शुरू में कहा कि is more, so my worry, especially in this country, always, is how do we communicate the good of the sector first? There is enough conversation on the bad of the sector. How do you communicate that? मतलब एक एनजीओ का कहीं पर एक कोई छोटा सा कुछ गड़बड़ होती है, every single media house, if they have space today for these kind of things, वो they will only say NGO ने ये कर दिया, they will never name the organization, right? You see, that means you are actually basically you are telling wrong about the entire fraternity. एंड हम भी से भी कोई उस पर वॉइस नहीं उठाता, कोई न्यूज़पेपर को वापस नहीं लिखता. हम इसी बात पे खुश हैं कि चलो यार इसने हमारा नाम तो नहीं लिया या हमें तो नहीं बोला, ये कोई XYZ होगा. बट that's how you defame the entire sector and the work of millions of people जिन्होंने अपना हार्ट और सोल लगाया हुआ है और बहुत कम रिसोर्सेज के साथ में लगाया हुआ है. एनजीओ सेक्टर को ना तो लोन मिलते शुरू करने के लिए और फेल होने के बाद वो एनपीए भी नहीं कर पाता है. तो इससे थोड़ा टफ वाला काम है ये. That way. That's why it is important.
Understood. What I did also was to look at some examples globally to see, which of the alliances and collaborators have been successful and why. And I'll come to you, Pratyush, and I don't know if this is the lack of my ability to be able to do a good research, but most of the most of the collaboratives that have been successful internationally are around funding initiatives. So, donors will come together and pool in their funds because they recognize, and rightly so, the fact that, their individual contributions may not be able to make an impact at scale. But very often what happens is that, they come in together and then they say, ki, ab aap kar lijiye, and sort of do that. So that kind of works because, they've come in together. There's a, intermediary. Again, I'm sorry, I'm speaking again as a beneficiary of that, as a consultant. Let's get a consultant and who will sort of put together a program design and identify, how this particular cause has been implemented. So funding brings people together. What is the other purpose where we feel, as Anshu said, the other purpose of something like this is to show the good side of the sector. I'm sure most NGOs, most non-profits are always showing good reports to their donors. Very rarely do they talk about failures and lessons from failures. But is there any other purpose for bringing a unified voice? Credibility is one that Anshu already mentioned.
So, more than probably funding, what has made some of the best NGO coming closer in India, what I have experienced in 20 years is a common cause, a common purpose. So I've seen, same example of COVID time and all. So small NGO, big NGO, corporate, those like-minded people come together and started working in the best possible way. So funding was not an issue for them. For them was getting like-minded people to put together who can start quickly, kind of things. Same thing I have realized in all of the disaster. Anshu has witnessed since 99 until now, they are everywhere. The first one to reach out to site, irrespective of funding in hand or not. So I've seen the purpose and that narrative set very specifically, and people jumps in by looking at that specific narratives. And they start, the moment people start digressing out of that narrative, the purpose gets blurred, some will certainly withdraw, or most of them.
So the point is that if there's an issue at stake and like-minded people are coming together, the unified voice to that extent for that particular issue is already there. Do you need something beyond that?
Voice is not there. It's like, let's first आग लगी है पहले बुझा लो. जब तक बात करते तब तक आधे लोग गायब है. So it's pretty informal. It has no formal setup. And when you try to talk out, people are not around. And especially when, it is like the issues has gone and some other issues comes out and people stop talking on those lines. So today also, flood is a disaster. Drought is not. Drought is not. वो slow killer है. It's a slow poison. So wherever the place where Pani Foundation works, annual 100 mm rainfall, each drop matters. Go to Yavatmal, every alternate home in a village has a suicide case. अभी तक आँख नहीं खुली लोगों की.
Understood.
अभी तक आँख नहीं खुली लोगों की.
Sanjeev, you wanted to?
ये इन्होंने बहुत अच्छा पॉइंट कहा क्योंकि ना इसका आई हैव गॉट अ लाइव एग्जांपल टू सपोर्ट दिस because the earlier the system was always, at least it appeared to be, in a firefighting mode. There are issues around, yeah. So you need consulting support, yeah. Go ahead, get it. Of late, and the process started as early as which I could recognize firsthand, when the annual health survey, which I was talking to you about this morning, this afternoon. So when annual health a survey was conceived by the government of India, it was the Directorate of Census General who had been given this honors by the Ministry of Health to conduct it across India, not all states, but multiple states. So right from the word go, because the government already knew that the types of agency who can be a potential applicant who would respond to the government tender would be of a type which somebody should be able to recognize in terms of the problem that they can potentially face as they are hired to undertake this, right? So Deloitte had been hired right from the stage when this survey was being designed. So that was one instance when the government realized and it refused to be in that firefighting mode. So the authenticity of that data, which was obtained then, processed, and published, was remarkable. So I entirely agree with you. If that system is actually in place, and the people who are the program managers of these big ambitious developmental initiative on behalf of this country, which includes government also, they have to be proactive the way they ought to be. Not that when a problem arises, then you are needing a technical support or hand-holding support. And there have been numerous instances where I've seen government standing and requesting technical agencies to come forward and support them to do a job.
Before I go on to the third round, in terms of the tactical ways of actually getting this done, just again, want to be cognizant of the audience and if there are any questions up to now that we can cover. Yes, please. Can somebody give the lady a mic, the one in green? Last row.
Yeah, I mean, it's a question, but before that, a small story. What happened last week? So, in a collaborative, there were like 40 plus organizations, and then we were playing a game. And the game started with everybody having their individual sound and movement, and then basically you had to move around the room and finally converge to one sound and one movement. Normally, that game takes like 45 minutes in any normal scenario globally. Somehow, in that collaborative, it finished in less than 10 minutes. So, I mean, when I see this, a unified voice, sometimes this question of unified voice is also scary, right? Because the reason they unified so quickly is because there was a loud voice in the room, and then everybody just found it easy, found it like, it's just is something that you would want to do it to make the work easier for everybody. And maybe in this sector, we tend to do that. So just that reflection came in that while we unify, can we also be mindful of whose voice is the dominant voice that we probably unify on? And how do we ensure that who are the people missing? Whose voice, whose faint voice or soft voice we're not hearing? Whose voice is not on the table right now? Even at the DoDM, for an example, whose voice are we not hearing? So just that reflection I wanted to bring. Yeah.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for bringing that point. And I think that sort of also, any other before I go?
Yeah, I thought, hi, my name is Makin. One of the core reasons for having a unified voice, in my opinion, starts from having an identity for the sector. Look, we are a non-government organization, we are non-blah blah, right? But हम करते क्या हैं उसके around there isn't galvanization, there isn't purpose around like, oh, this is who we are. So identification, just basic identification of what we stand for. And I feel and maybe the elephant in the room around Yeah, the legal and the compliance challenges of running a non-profit in the country continue to be surmounting, and there aren't voices around it. There isn't a unified voice around, hey, what is a balanced view of what non-profits are able to achieve or not, right? And the need for, at least from a compliance structure or uh, and there are enough examples globally to learn from, but we aren't keen or interested. So for me, both identity and compliance feel like key reasons to have a unified voice. But otherwise, I do agree that I think too much unification beyond that can be very dangerous.
And I think the first sector where the identity starts with non. कि हम क्या नहीं हैं. You know, that itself is a problem.
Okay, should I go on the next round? Yeah, so. Sure. Okay, no, so absolutely. Thank you for asking these questions, because this also sort of is the third segment of this session. Is that need hai, chahiye, how do we make this real? Again, this was again, a very, very strong initiative from ISDM to say that if we really need it, what do we need to do? What does it actually mean? How is it tangible? Is it an organization? Is it a body? It's an intangible thing. It's, what is it? How do we make it real is the question that we need to come. And before we sort of craft that out, what are those building blocks of these things? I mean, for example, again, dominant view, how to avoid that is a process of training, is a particular set of views to say that when you are sort of managing a coalition or managing different kind of voices, then the way you manage it and make sure that dominant voices do not sort of is actually a training and a process that most of us may not have undergone. So perhaps we need something like that. I'm just giving an example, but I wanted to hear from all three of you to what could be those building blocks to ensure that when you are building a thing, I don't know if it's a tangible or intangible X, what should one consider and how can we sort of go for it? And if there are any examples that come to your mind that one can learn from.
In my opinion, the most important thing is listening. Okay, I mean, that's what we are often missing. So what you were saying, some of the examples which are sitting here itself, like if you see Pani Foundation, because the foundation went and listened a lot in Maharashtra, didn't impose anything, right? Gram Vikas Libby is sitting here because they listened in Odisha in a big way and didn't impose anything. Even we at Goonj are an example of that. If we are able to do something, that too in different parts of India, it is only because we listened to people. And then you listen that in any case, the voice is unified at least at that level. That unification starts not from top down, but from bottoms up. And that becomes also huge amount of inspiring for the other joining areas. Again, I'm saying Pani Foundation and Gram Vikas and us, at least three organizations, many more are sitting here. I'm just giving three examples. This is how it happened that people started speaking in a particular language. People started understanding a particular way of doing something. And then with a little bit of tweak and all, a lot of people were inspired from the peer group, not from us. So that's what I always feel, that even in the development sector, it's not just about creating a huge FICCI kind of institution, which is important. If we have that, it'll be much easier. But also, how do we create more of these smaller sections and consortiums, not just on the basis on the issues कि ये वाला coalition सिर्फ पानी पे काम करेगा. मुझे लगता है उसमें कभी-कभी थोड़ी सी दिक्कत होती है, because we are talking about multi-sector thing.
Exactly, and that is the challenge. So I'm sure everybody understands listening is important, but who will listen in this body? Is this one body, one individual, one magazine, what's the tangible nature? Who would listen? Because as you rightly said, every organization which is working towards a cause has done enough research. Satya has gone out for 8 months. We all know your journey of starting Goonj. But as a collective and as a collaborative or as a unified, is this a set of individuals we're talking about? Is it an organized body? What is it? How do you vision this?
My answer to that is that ideal situation is a body.
Body.
Okay. And the way it is happening is the institutions are listening. Some of the institutions are imposing, some of the institutions are listening. So the positive part of it is that the institutions which are listening are already almost ready to join this body. और वो एक रेडी ग्राउंड है हम लोगों के पास में बना हुआ. ये शायद मेरे जैसे और मेरे जैसे हम जैसे कई और लोगों का फेल्योर है जो आज की डेट में सो कॉल्ड सीनियर जिनको लोग बोल देते हैं, और हम लोग अभी भी अपनी अपनी लड़ाइयों में लगे हुए हैं. और तो मैं तो इसको अपना बहुत लार्ज स्केल पे फेल्योर मान के चलता हूँ, मतलब अपना भी और अपने जैसे बहुत सारे लोगों का, कि ऐसा नहीं है कि यदि हम थोड़ा सा एफर्ट करें तो ये नहीं होगा. बिकॉज द फैक्ट रिमेन्स दैट if you see Joy of Giving Week was created like this, the Aspire Circle is created like this, Catalyst is one of the biggest global example created like this, जिसमें कोई full time लोग नहीं थे, हम ही कुछ लोगों ने अपना टाइम एफर्ट थोड़ा बहुत पैसा डाला and it started happening. वो क्या shape लेगा, that's a different issue, but at least those things are happening, so those things can happen.
Pratyush, you are also now venturing into putting up a collaborative. Any thoughts and ideas from that experience?
No, two pretty positive and high-end things from civil society, social sector professionals. All these like examples, like Libby is also, we all, these organizations, NGO, so-called NGO, जो non से start होता है, so-called, but they're very good at skill or institutional building process. If they can do it for community at a large scale, why can't they can do it for themselves? It's humanly possible. Better, the skills is much better at civil society as compared to corporate and government. Number one, the strength.
So you're saying the strength from a capability perspective?
Institutional building process.
Institutional.
They have done it for community. It's time to do it for themselves. Second thing, most of our old-timer organizations, they're equally good on the process documentation part also. The how part of any development process. That also yield lot of result here. Third good thing is, tell me how many of you are from related to social and environmental sector here sitting? Just raise your hand. Almost like 50%. Tell me one more thing, question to all of you. You have seen FICCI office in Delhi. You must have seen CIO office, ICSI office, Chartered Accountant office. How many of you like to see a same kind of office in somewhere in Lodi Road for your development sector? Raise your hand. मेरे को भी लगता था when I started my career, where do I go if I need to? Today I am supporting I'm in multiple committee of FICCI, CI across, but I don't have a committee for myself. As I said, it's too late for us to get it realized, but this need to get it realized. We need to have it. We must have it. Sooner is better. The only answer.
Sanjeev, will FICCI do it for us? As a pro bono, of course.
India Sanitation Coalition, along with its corporate partners, is already committed to organizing the non-profit, because the fact remains कि हमारा काम इनके बिना और इनका काम हमारे बिना दोनों, it is such a huge interdependence. क्योंकि मैंने करीब I have been part of that journey where I could witness 1,700 villages attaining open defecation free status in Jharkhand, Bihar and SM. तो मुझे पता है कि ग्राउंड पे कौन लोग काम कर सकते हैं, करते हैं, कर रहे हैं. प्रॉब्लम क्या ना, अब देखिए, इफ़ यू जस्ट द एक्रोनिम NGO, ये बाहर एक तरह से समझा जाता है, अपने यहाँ वेरी अनफॉर्चुनेटली एक अलग तरीके से. तो क्या हम अपने जो हमारे को पैनलिस्ट हैं, कैन आई रिक्वेस्ट देम टू रेज दिस कि क्या कैन वी लुक फॉर एन ऑल्टरनेटिव एक्रोनिम? इसको हटाना बहुत ज़रूरी है. कुछ हम लोग और कहें, मतलब it would remain the same in in terms of spirit and action, but ये इसको हटाना, क्योंकि यहाँ the moment you say NGO लगता है NGO मतलब कुछ अलग है यार. अरे it's not बाबा, anything which is non government is NGO, लेकिन ये कोई नहीं मानता है. So now
maybe a non-FICCI is the name that can start a body for us.
Exactly, मैं बता रहा हूँ.
Okay.
लेकिन let's start on a regional basis. Do not think anything of go the other way around. If you start from the state, then India is huge. 33, 34 entities, मुश्किल होगा. लेकिन अगर region है तो only 5. East, west, north, south, northeast, 5. So can first the 5 regional bodies of non-profit be considered for action. That is one point I would like to make. And then any support which is expected from at least, I can't comment anything on behalf of FICCI because it's a huge organization, but India Sanitation Coalition at FICCI would be committed to lending any kind of support that is expected from us.
Thank you.
And we
Thank
have a
you.
huge
Thank
network,
you.
I can assure you that.
Thank you.
Which comprises of everyone, bilaterals, multilaterals, non-profit, corporates, the UN organizations. Thank you.
तो थैंक यू अंशु आप कुछ कह रहे थे
नहीं, बहुत स्ट्रेंज सजेशन है, बट मुझे लगता है कि नॉट फॉर प्रॉफिट की जो बॉडी है दैट शुड बी फॉर प्रॉफिट बॉडी. दैट विल मेक इट मच ईजियर फॉर अस टू ऑपरेट बिकॉज टू सस्टेन वो कैसे ऑपरेट होगा वी डोंट नो बिकॉज अदरवाइज वी ऑलरेडी हैव वानी, वी ऑलरेडी हैव मैनी अदर इंस्टीट्यूशंस, बट वो भी क्योंकि दे आर ऑल्सो रजिस्टर्ड एज नॉट फॉर प्रॉफिट, सो इट बिकम्स वेरी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड टू ऑपरेट. एंड जस्ट ऐसा नहीं है कि हम लोगों ने एफर्ट नहीं करें, बट ये हमारे या तो हाफ हार्टेड एफर्ट्स थे या हम फेल हो गए. नॉट दैट एफर्ट नहीं हो रहे हैं, बहुत सारे लोगों ने किए हैं, इसी वजह से बहुत सारे लेवल पे देयर आर यूनिफिकेशन. एंड इट्स नॉट अबाउट क्रिएटिंग एन एसोसिएशन. एसोसिएशन हैज अ पर्पज, एसोसिएशन हैज अ पर्पज एज वी ऑल डिस्कस. तो एफर्ट्स हुए हैं, इट नीड्स मच मोर एफर्ट. एंड ऑल्सो आई ऑलवेज फील दैट अ गुड अमाउंट ऑफ रिसोर्सेज आर ऑल्सो नीडेड. जो अभी प्रत्युष ने सवाल उठाया कि भाई वो बिल्डिंग या वो एक वर्क फोर्स आपको चाहिए ना, तो वो बहुत सारे नॉट फॉर प्रॉफिट के लिए इट इज़ नॉट पॉसिबल कि वो अपने बजट्स में से रेगुलर उसमें से निकाल दें. एक मेंबरशिप दे देंगे 10,000-10,000 रुपए की, उससे एक बॉडी स्टार्ट नहीं हो पाएगी. रन हो सकती है बट स्टार्ट नहीं हो पाएगी. दैट्स व्हाट वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड.
Got it. No, thank you. I'm conscious there are 7 minutes. I want to take 2 minutes to summarize and also put my own thoughts. And I want to, finish this on time. Otherwise, it'll not be a good job as a moderator. So, my own personal thank you so much for bringing the point on the for-profit and non-profit. And I think as consultants, again, our sector is matured, and what we learn from working with various donors and various implementation organizations. Most donors are now mature enough to say that we are not going to just support the organization just because they are a Section 8 or a Section 25 company or we get an ATG. I think that realization from a lot of donors is coming very strongly to us because they care for the cause, they care for the ability to be able to solve for that problem. So, from my own perspective, a humble suggestion would be for a lot of organizations is to start thinking about a for-profit entity. It does not take away your agenda. It doesn't put you in a bad light. Yes, you'll have to pay government taxes, but the legitimacy of the organization, the ability to do a lot more, especially on scale initiatives, etc., becomes significantly better as a for-profit, and hence, you don't get trapped in the fact that we can't do this and admin expenses and so many other challenges that come with being a non-profit entity. So again, as a consultant hat, if I put on, I really encourage everybody to think on that line. So sharp at 5, I just want to summarize. So clearly, a unified voice is needed.
Can I comment on this?
Of course. Because this is my own comment, of course.
So, but because you are a consultant, you influence a lot. Large part of the development work cannot happen in the for-profit space.
Okay.
Let's understand that, because जिन areas पे ये sector जाके serve करता है, they can pay you back in many other currencies but not in money. तो या तो ये दुनिया मान ले कि labor एक currency है, wisdom एक currency है, and they can pay you back in labor and material. And that's what Goonj does in the last so many years. But if we expect those people also to become a stakeholder in terms of giving money also, we are only putting more and more pressures. Some work can certainly happen for profit. I mean, the fact remains the richest possible schools are non-profit, running with profit. So you have a scope for that. But for large number of grassroots initiatives, you still need very solid not-for-profit approach. I mean, that's how little bit of experience, we say that.
No, and I'm on time. We have 4 minutes. We definitely like to have questions, and otherwise I'll just take this time to summarize. Any questions? Yes, sir. Can somebody please pass on the mic? Second row.
Just a couple of comments. My name is Arjun Uppal, and I've been working very closely with CII and FICCI for a while, for the last 15 years. What my experience tells me, and I think there's complete consensus on the need for that, and I agree with that myself. is that for a successful body, and I don't think it's very important whether it's for profit or not for profit. By the way, CII is a not for profit and yet pays taxes. So those are technicalities. I think what is really important is one, good leadership, two, very good governance, and three, which may not, I mean, everybody may not agree with this, but this body should never be seen as an activist body. The moment that angle comes, you're setting it up for disaster. It has to be seen with a very collaborative approach. So, for example, if a FICCI or a CII has a view, they put it as politely as possible to the government, as humbly as possible, and never confrontation. Because then you have a problem. And I know a lot of people in this sector are activists and don't agree with what the government will say. I'm afraid that will not work. So one has to be very conscious of that. You know, it's a bit like if CII goes to the government and says reduce taxes and increase expenditure so that it doesn't work like that. You know, at the end of the day, the government also has to balance its books. So you have to be very, very positive with the government. So I just wanted to flag that that whenever this body comes in place, whoever puts it together, stay away from activism.
Thank you. That's really good advice. Yes, sir. Very good one.
First of all, thank you very much for bringing up this particular topic, and thank you all the panelists and the moderator for. I mean, it's really an enjoying session. Just a newborn baby into this particular sector after 30 years of a full for-profit segment. Why this particular, whether we say a body or a unified voice or something, what I feel, because last 3 years only I've been into this sector, we require a real representation of the sector. And what I am facing, because I came from that particular corporate, so I tried that, because everything was there into my mind, that resource mobilization, then better utilization of the resources, where I have seen that there is some kind of a rigidity amongst ourselves. Once I talk about the collaboration in terms of just utilizing in a optimum manner the resources, then sometimes there is a pseudo competition I can feel with my fellow organization. So that is the way I think. Yes, there are plus minus and the entire think tank. Whomsoever is there into the segment, the leaders organizations, because a lot of gaps are there in terms of the compliances, whomsoever is coming new. Because to be very honest, I don't know how many CS and CAs are present at this room. They are not very much clear about even the compliances. And that's the way some of the new organizations, they don't know. Similarly, the social stock exchange, the government has taken the initiative. Some of the CS you just talk about or CA, they said, we don't know how to go about. So all these things, I think once there is a body, even, maybe 10 years down the line, we can demand for a separate regulator. I think that is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know we have only 30 seconds. Yes, sir.
Okay, I was just listening to the ideas. We have one thing about representation. Who will represent in these bodies? Like, who will these people be? Another idea or another thing जिससे हमें बच के रहना is like किस तरह के ideas हम लेके आ रहे हैं, management का है या किसका है? Like we just heard, like sir, with due respect, I'm not saying anything. Like activists, like word NGOs. वो बदलने से कैसे अब like last report we had in March where like around इन CSR फंड्स अगर हमें 100 रुपये मिले थे वो 65 रुपये किकबैक्स की तरह कॉर्पोरेट्स को वापस चले गए. आर वी लेबलिंग देम? वी आर नॉट लेबलिंग कॉर्पोरेट्स बट वी आर लेबलिंग NGOs. एक NGO ने कुछ गलत किया उसको पूरा. तो हमारी किस तरह की सोच इसमें रिप्रेजेंट करने वाली है? वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू, वी हैव टू बी वेरी केयरफुल अबाउट दैट. थैंक यू.
No, thank you. Thank you. This has been fantastic. Is there anybody, again, a quick show of hands, who still feel that we don't need a unified voice? So you had a question or you feel it's not? I'm sorry, we just have, this is the red signal here. But anybody else? So I think that kind of sums up the need. Yes, I totally understand from a summary perspective the need to have a right leadership, the right name, the agenda, how do we collaborate and be true to our mission. So thank you all for choosing the session, staying back and listening patiently. Much, much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you so much to the panelists. May I request Shweta Prakash, Center Lead CDSSI ISDM, to felicitate our panelists as a token of our gratitude and appreciation, followed by a group photograph. As with all our events at ISDM, we have put together a bag with few items to capture the gratitude to our esteemed speakers and guests. A tree is being planted at Trees for Delhi by Grow Trees with ISDM. The bag also contains the book Samaj Sarkar Bazaar by Rohini Nilingani. This is an anthology of a journey into civil society and philanthropy. We also have the Data Indeed booklet put together by ISDM Center for Data Science and Social Impact, and A New Era of Giving, a compilation of essays and reflections by eminent philanthropists brought out by ISDM Center of Philanthropy for Inclusive Development. We are now breaking for tea, and after that we will assemble here in Samrasta at 4 p.m. for the next session. Thank you so much.